my Georgia Bulldogs are absolutely embarrassed, outplayed, second loss of the year on the road to Ole Miss, just outplayed in every single facet, man. Give me some of your takeaways that you saw from a really painful game for Georgia.
So to start with, I got to point out Bobo and Beck sabotaging the offense like they have been all season.
Sabotagers
Um,
at law.
yeah, pretty much. UGA gets a touchdown early on, start the game, and that's about where it is for them. I mean,
Yeah.
just being honest,
That and the
the
Dan Jackson
physicality was
pick.
outmatched. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, excuse me, Ole Miss outmatched them physically.
Yeah.
That wins football games, especially in the SEC. Um, a touchdown apiece in the first and third quarter. The rest was a field goal fest. I mean,
Yep. Yeah.
Lane Kiffin's
Yeah.
defense was able to control the game, really. Beck and
Yep.
Dart, they throw a pick apiece. But shout out to the Ole Miss kicker, Caden Davis, man, putting up 5
Yep.
field goals to steal this one for the Rebels, man.
Yep.
Georgia's got one more loss, man. One more until they're out of
Yeah.
playoff contention. Because
Yeah.
to be honest,
Ugh.
I'm not sold anymore. I really don't. I don't know where they go after this. I don't know what happens. I'm not sure of it. Um,
Yeah.
you know, we foreshadowed this as a possibility last week. Um,
Yep. Yep.
them potentially being out of playoff contention and even a conference championship spot because you got Tennessee right there sniffing for
Mm-hmm.
it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you
And
don't
they got
beat
the
them,
defense to be able
it's
to
over.
stifle them. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And then, Texas doing what they do. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm gonna let you have the floor, man.
Yeah, no worries. It's crazy when you look at Georgia coming in with those 2 losses, the 2 losses being in the SEC as well. So it's definitely tedious for them because, I've heard broadcasters and podcasters talking all week after the crazy Saturday. There's going to be a 10-2 team in the SEC that's left out of the college football playoff because it just won't be justifiable when you look at other resumes, when you look at other records, when you look at the stack of the SEC. And you're right. If Georgia does drop one more game, they're possibly out of the playoffs, more than likely out of the playoffs. They are not going to go to the SEC championship with 3 SEC losses. They'll really have to bank on, Texas A&M beating Texas to give Texas 2 SEC losses because at the top it's Texas and who else is at the top? I think it might be Ole Miss, actually. I want to say Texas and Ole Miss actually might be at the top of the SEC,
Yeah, I'm
with
gonna
not a
pull it
lot
up.
of please fact check me on that. But we know that if Georgia falls to 3 losses, not only will that give them a third loss, but it'll give them a third SEC loss as well. So it's just going to make it even tougher for them. And maybe you and I could even get a early show, not an early show, a show tomorrow, maybe just a segment with you and I talking about the college football rankings
So,
once they come out. Go ahead.
Tennessee and Texas A&M are on top of the SEC right now.
Tennessee, Tennessee, and Tennessee and Texas A&M, or Tennessee and
Yeah,
Texas.
Tennessee and Texas A&M. They're both
Okay,
5-1 in the conference play.
right, and then Texas just has the 1 loss to Georgia, which is also conference play as well.
Right. Yeah, they're four
Right,
and
yeah.
one
So
in
it's
conference, so they're third.
Right. It's getting hairy. Georgia has to beat Tennessee this weekend, and they've got to cross their fingers for another SEC team in the standings above them to lose, of course. And, I just look at that Texas A&M Texas game, and I'm going to be an Aggie for life watching that one, hoping that my dogs can get into it. But let's get into some of the takeaways of the game. Like you said, of course, Beck and Bobo just absolutely sabotaging this team. That'll be a point that I get to in a minute, but it can't go unmentioned here. And we kind of learned something new about Carson Beck today, in this game, oddly enough. But Jackson Dart, he comes in off a legendary 562-yard game for Ole Miss, a school record that was held for 55 years. Walking into this game, he didn't have 562 in this game. Ole Miss comes in most sacks in the country, so it's a great pass rush for Georgia to fear, and they knew that was going to be a weapon for them. Georgia was going to have to fear that Ole Miss pass rush in this game. Ole Miss also came in with the 3rd most penalty yards in the country and 52 points allowed under Lane Kiffin to top 5 teams as well. So, there were some weaknesses there for Georgia, some weaknesses there for Ole Miss as well. I thought, Georgia's defense had a good statement early on with the Dan Jackson interception. I just think that was Jackson Dart trying to settle in at home, playing against that Georgia defense. And like you said, outside of that pick and a touchdown for Georgia early on, that was really it. I did appreciate Mike Bobo running the ball more in this game, but it was very clear
Right.
that it was not working. And Ole Miss kept
Mm-mm.
stuffing it up the middle on the outside. And when you shut down the run for a team and that are eliminating that from them, you can pin your ears back as a pass rusher, as the defense, as the front
Right.
seven. go get on the quarterback. I did appreciate the aggression on the 4th and goal to punch it in for Georgia early on. Glad Jackson Dart got out of that injury scare as well. But this is how I knew the defense
Absolutely.
for Georgia on the night. Redshirt freshman Austin Simmons comes in, and he was absolutely dealing. He had our defense letting up wide open passes in between zones. And when you just look at the first half for Georgia
Yep.
offensively, 69 yards of offense. Their 6 drives went touchdown off a short field from an interception, 4 straight punts, and then the end of the half. Again, Bobo running the ball more, but Georgia was just getting worked in the trenches in the first half. 20 rushing yards, the least and a half in 3 years, 2 sacks allowed on Carson Beck, 5 tackles for loss. You go into the second half. I thought the first drive out, was decent. I hated that we stalled at the end, had to settle for 3. We had 4 plays of 10 plus yards in the first half, and we had 4 plays of 10 plus yards on that first drive coming out of halftime, and we had 3 all of the first half. So Georgia starts to show you some signs coming out of the half that they're going to be able to, to do something great. But then you take a look at the Georgia secondary out there playing like the Alabama Crimson Tide, major
Mm-hmm.
liability. Really, and prove me wrong, Alan, or pipe in on this. Can you remember one contested pass in this game? I feel like every time Jackson Dart dropped back, had a completion to a receiver, they were wide open. They chewed up yards on Georgia, and Jackson Dart was just playing very well. I mean, am I wrong to say that Georgia did not contest a single pass that Ole Miss
No,
actually for a completion?
their
Every
defensive
completion
backs
was
were
wide open.
yeah, their defensive backs were non-factors in this game at all. Like
It was
Jackson
bad.
was able to lace it every time. And
Yep.
another thing I want to point out one thing you mentioned. Them going for the run but not being able to be efficient because Lane Kiffin's a defensive guru at the end of the day,
Right.
especially with run defense. So there's
Right.
that. And
Yep.
congratulations to your daughter, man, going to Ole Miss. That's incredible.
Yeah, he was saying that his daughter just went to Ole Miss, so he was like, you know what, I love you. I still got to cheer for the dogs. So, what's up, Emery? Appreciate you jumping into the stream, man. Hope business is going well since last time I saw you. But yeah, and when Jackson Dart was blitzed, then it was it started to be effective on Ole Miss's offense. I thought Georgia needed to blitz more in this game as well. Carson Beck did have a really nice play in this game. 3rd and 3 throw with about 4.5 minutes to go in the third quarter. Absolutely beautiful. He went through his reads, hung in a muddy
Hmm.
pocket with pressure. One of the few times he did that night. Kept his
Yeah,
feet moving, delivered the strike, got the first down, but then he fumbled, just plays later. That was really a game changer. And then really just a great play from Ole Miss's defense as well, again, with that pass rush. So through 3 quarters, Bobo was keeping every pass short and in front of Carson Beck. And I think he finally started to hear, okay, Carson Beck's got all these turnovers in these last games. No need to restate the numbers because we've said it here on the show. But even in 7 SEC games, Carson Beck, 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, not looking very good. And we know those types of
nope.
interceptions don't win you football games. There's a lot of screens in this game that were hit or miss. I was not a fan of the play calling at all. Bobo was coaching very scared. Beck was very timid. And last time Georgia overcame a deficit like this in the fourth quarter, 10 points, 1999 on the road at Vanderbilt. Nate Frazier gets stripped a couple times in this game as well. I think he's really got to work on his,
Hmm.
grip strength as a running back for sure. Georgia gets bailed out on an ugly strip sack of Carson Beck. They ended up, tagging the face mask a little bit there. That was Ole Miss's only 2nd penalty of the day. They had 3 all day, and to know that they were the 3rd most penalized team in terms of yards coming into the game, it was kind of crazy to see. But just a few more points here. Really, the biggest points of the game is Georgia's O line. They were just bullied all damn night. And Carson Beck could not pick up the blitz. That's the new thing that we learned about
Nope.
Carson Beck in this game. If you blitz him heavily and effectively, Georgia's O-line played their worst game of the season. Carson Beck had one of his most timid, scared games of the season. And when you cannot run the ball, it was very easy for Lane Kiffin. He told that front 4, pin your ears back and go get Carson Beck. And that's exactly what happened. And that's really what Georgia fans just watched all night, if we're being honest, man. There was not any
Exactly.
effectiveness out of this offense at all, and obviously Carson Beck throws a pick. That throw did get tipped, so I'm not putting that on Beck. I'm not even putting that on Bobo, because if you look at the, Georgia player that's getting separation behind that, it was going to be a good play. He was going to hit him on the slant, but it gets tipped. It, throws it behind him a little bit as well. So last 5 losses for Georgia dating back to 2020, they're -10 in the turnover margin. Georgia has 15 turnovers in their last 6 games. 3 of them in this game obviously killed the drives.
Right.
Georgia also leads the country in drop passes with 27. Their offense ranks 50th in the country, along with the defense being exposed in back-to-back weeks. Carson Beck only pressured on 20% of his dropbacks, I think for the year, if I understood that correctly, which was the 3rd lowest in the country. So Ole Miss saw that. They apparently saw some sort of weakness in Georgia's O-line. Tate Ratledge definitely has to get more healthy before the Tennessee game. And to
For
top it
sure.
all off, Ole Miss was winless versus AP top 2 teams. They were 0-11 all-time at home. They pull out the big win, and Georgia now is left wondering what's going to happen with them, with their fate. And pipe in on this one, man. Do you think we got to give a little more credit to Ole Miss here, or did they just kind of expose Georgia for kind of what they've been all season? They just finally caught them in a trap game on the road and really just ran it up on them. So do you give Ole Miss, like, do you think they're a legit contender possibly in the SEC with this win?
I'm gonna give them a nod, and also, I mean, a little bit of both, really. I mean, because it was bound to happen for Georgia. I
Yeah.
mean, the Alabama game was one thing, but this, mm-mm. And then Ole Miss, I've I've been an advocate for them all season long, and everybody's like, "Oh, who have they played? Who have they played? Who have they played?" I'm like, "All right, they just played somebody, and they beat
Yep.
them,
Yep.
and they do
Because we've
get
been
that
saying
AP
Ole
top
Miss
2
can't win the
win."
big game.
So
Mm-hmm.
finally, for
Right.
Ole Miss. And to answer Emery's question,
Yeah.
I do think Dart is a Sunday quarterback because I had him in my Heisman contention all
Yeah.
season.
Yep.
And then Beck, definitely not. Maybe a
Nah.
backup at best. He's going to end up
Y-
like Jake Fromm.
Yeah, yeah. When you have decision making like that, that turns scouts off. That will not get you drafted. You will not be playing on Sundays in the National Football League with the type of decision making that you have from
Can't deal with a
Carson Beck.
blitz.
Nope, nope. Appreciate that. Appreciate that comment, Emery. Really appreciate that, man. Yeah, Jackson Dart could definitely be a Sunday quarterback, but Beck, not so much.